Hi everybody, I'm Taylor Robinson, your host for your Friday edition of CU. Today we have a very special guest. Diana Raab is going to tell us all about journaling, meditating, all that kind of stuff that goes into sort of calming the chaos of our life, correct?
That's absolutely right.
Yes. So when you came up with the concept of the book, I mean, what made you go that direction?
Well, I wrote Healing with Words, a writer's cancer journey, after I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2001. But the fact of the matter is that journaling has saved my life since I'm 10 years old, when my grandmother took her life in my childhood home. And my mother had no other way to help me cope other than to buy me my first journal. And so because back then in the 60s, you know, they didn't have therapists as much as they do now. And so she gave me the journal and she said, just write down your feelings, write what's bothering you. And I journaled during those times and during other difficult times of my life. Like, for example, when I was on bed rest with 3 children, and then when I had a difficult teenager, and then when I was diagnosed with cancer. And actually all my books, and this is my 8th book, have all started on the pages of my journal, whether it was a poem or it was just an anecdote. So journaling has been a part of my life for many, many years. I've got volumes and volumes in my library. Yes.
I don't blame you. No, I mean, I remember from my age, you know, having a diary and sort of chronicling those kind of things. I mean, are there any times where you've, you know, been at a certain point of your life and you decided, let me go back to this time, or what was I thinking, or do you ever do that?
I do, actually, and sometimes if I'm stuck for writing ideas, I will go scan through the journals, and that's why when I teach at UCLA Extension, I teach journaling. I teach this, and also high-risk kids in the community. I teach them that it's very important to write the date on top of on the page of your journal, because when you go back and you say, "Wow, was I really thinking like that in 5 years ago?"
Right,
you
it's
know,
so bizarre.
Yeah.
So
and
bizarre.
also, even if you like drawing or any doodling, you can also doodle in your journal. It doesn't have to be so regimented where you just write.
Now, I feel like you're a sort of self-prescribed sort of expert on journaling. I mean, how do you start? I mean, does it always have to be, you know, for you, I feel like it's been triggered by another experience. Does journaling always have to be like that, or no?
Well, typically people turn to journaling during difficult times, although there's nothing wrong with doing it, you know, when you're going through happy times. For example, my middle daughter got married this summer, so I journaled a little bit about how the joyous occasion.
And
so,
it was beautiful,
it was
wasn't it?
wonderful. Yes, of course, of course. And so it's typically triggered by an event, but I also, when I teach journaling, I suggest that you journal every day, whether you have a special event to write about or not. And first thing in the morning is usually the best time when we're fresh, unless you have to rush off to a class or to work or you know, change diapers or whatever you need to do first thing in the morning. But you know, just find a time of day when it's quiet for you, uninterrupted, and that's really the best thing. So it's a habit, 15 to 20 minutes a day. It's just a habit, sort of like brushing your teeth, and then the habit becomes a passion, and then you just want to write for 30 minutes, for 40 minutes, and you never know what it'll evolve. Maybe a book will evolve, or
which is what happens to you.
Happened to me.
It's just pouring out of you. So for a lot of our viewers, you know, USC students, you know, people in the sort of 18 to 22, 23 age bracket. So how will journaling help those people? You say you teach at the UCLA Extension. So, I mean, are there younger students in your classes talking about journaling and wanting to do that?
Yes, there's actually a mix. I mean, we've got professionals, then we also have that have been working full time, and there's also some students that are sort of trying to find themselves, trying to figure out what they want to do with their life, and just starting out with you know, I give a lot of writing prompts, but you can just start out by writing, you know, this is how I feel today, or I remember when. And even if you start going and saying, I remember when my baby sister was born, for example, and maybe that'll lead you to feelings that you had when your baby sister was born, but then you might start talking about a boyfriend or a career path. And so the joy about journaling, it's not like writing a college essay where you have to have a beginning, middle, and end. It could go whatever path, wherever your mind takes it. So that's what makes it fun. And you shouldn't cross out or edit, or, I mean, grammar doesn't, you don't have to turn it in.
That's
it's just
hard
for you.
That's hard for me, because I'll look at a word and I'll go, ooh, geez, did I really spell that like that? It's just a brutal, brutal experience. So when you, I mean, how old were you when you sort of decided that you wanted to be a writer? I mean, that within itself is a huge career decision.
Right. Well, that's a really good question, because I've always been writing, you know, since the age of 10. But in university, I studied health administration with a minor in journalism. So I was a medical journalist for about 25 years, and then I went. During that time, I went for my RN degree. So, you know, I've done a lot of medical writing, and it's just sort of, writing has just always been a part of my life. And it just sort of evolved. I got sort of burnt out with medical journalism, and then I just started writing some more books. And then I was on bed rest with 3 of my kids, and actually that was my first book, and all the students are probably too young to remember this, but I typed my first book on a typewriter.
Oh, I remember the stories my mom told me about typewriters, and then putting them back and forth, and the
That's
whiteout,
right. The whiteout, and little slips of paper you had to put in.
Yes, and you got to type over the slip of paper.
That's right. And my husband was an engineer, and he built me a special table to go over my bed, my evolving belly there, and so the typewriter sat at a little slant with a little ledge, and there I was typing away, and so yeah, that's when I started. I was on bed rest. What else? I mean, how many sweaters can you knit? You know, so I was just writing my journey, and that actually evolved into my first book, helping other women with difficult pregnancies.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
a lot of my books have all been as a result of some personal experience. I have 2 poetry books out, which are also they're sort of memoir in style, and narrative poetry, not rhyming kind of poetry.
And the novel itself is sort of a memoir of your experience going through your cancer diagnosis and that kind of thing, correct?
Right. The Healing with Words is, I call it a self-help memoir, actually. And it has, I've got journaling prompts in there at the end of each chapter for women or whoever's going through whatever they're going through to write about their experience. And I also have a lot of poetry, and there's a big reference section at the end, you know, associations and whatnot to contact. And it's not just really for cancer survivors, it's for anybody that wants to learn how to journal. It's just, that's why it's called Healing with Words. Whatever you're healing through, whether it's a loss, whether it's you know, an illness, whatever it might be, you're healing, a change in life.
Now, we were talking about earlier in the actually backstage in the green room, you and I were talking about how you decided you're from New York originally, and what brought you to Los Angeles. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. We moved to Los Angeles. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2001, and we were living at the time. I was raised in New York, but when I got married, we moved a few times. But at the time in 2001, I was living in Orlando. Went to my doctor. I was 47, had my annual mammogram, and there was a problem with it. And he said, you know, you have something called DCIS, which is a very early form of breast cancer, and it's starting in the ducts. It's very early, and there's a specialist out in LA who I really want you to see. And so for a consult, for a second opinion. So I flew out to LA and met Dr. Mel Silverstein, who's now at Hoag. He was here at USC for many, many years. And he used to teach here also. In any event, so I met him, and he suggested surgery, and I fell in love with him in terms of in the sense that he was just such a nurturing, helpful individual, and he was just, I felt like he could heal me, and he was very wise. He'd been teaching around the country and the world actually about this form of breast cancer. So I came out, had him do my surgery, and we stayed here for 2 weeks, and while I healed, and then I just fell in love with California, visited some cousins up in Santa Barbara, and it just felt like the place that I needed to be. It just felt like a healing environment for me. So my husband wasn't quite ready to retire at the time, but we knew that then he came out here, and we decided that, you know, we were ready to move out here, make the move. So there's a poem in the book called Why I Love California.
Oh, really?
It's dedicated to Dr. Silverstein, and for that reason.
Now, I always ask people that are on the show, what are of course, you're in Los Angeles, and sometimes people are visiting, sometimes people live here. Like, what are your favorite places to go? And I know we talked about you lived in the downtown area. So there's, you know, I feel like downtown is kind of very up and coming. I mean, for me, I'm not from here, so yeah.
Right. Well, I actually live in Santa Barbara. And so, of course, that's my favorite place.
Right, of course.
So I love wine country, love going for wine tours there. Whenever we have guests, we always take them up to wine country.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But in Los Angeles, I mean, are there places that when you're here, do you kind of just say, oh, I need to go here, this is my sort of favorite place?
Not really. I mean, I've been, because some of my doctors in Beverly Hills, I often like walking around Beverly Hills. It's sort of like, because I feel like the whole area sort of healed me, all the healing. Yeah. And the healing energy is there, and I like Pasadena.
And Pasadena is
really
beautiful.
Good. I love Roman's bookstore down there. I've done a couple of journaling workshops there. Actually, it's a great place as well.
Now, you were telling me a little bit about sort of the process of sort of shopping around your books and shopping around ideas. You said a lot of now what people are doing is books are going to be completely online, and there's no more book tour. Can you kind of explain that a little bit?
Sure. Yes, this last book I've done 3 blog tours, and what a blog tour is, basically you sign up with a publicist who, instead of years ago, like my first book, for example, and many of the authors still sometimes do with the larger publishers, you publish a book and they'll send you to various cities around the country or world, and you'll go to bookstores and do readings and sell books and do signings. And it's become not as cost effective. They would spend a few $1,000s to get you out there, and you'd sell 3 books. So it's just like, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So now a lot is done online, in the sense that if I was on a blog tour and I was invited to guest blog on like 30 blogs, which means that the person who runs the blog would review the book, and then she would also have me as a guest blogger, and I'd write, for example, like one of them, I wrote a blog on how to write a healing poem. Another one was how to survive breast cancer. Another one was how to start journaling. Another one was the link between creativity and depression. So, yeah, so that's basically what a blog tour is. You sort of like, instead of you physically going to a bookstore, you're going to the site on the computer, which is a lot of work.
Right.
I mean, it was a lot of extra writing for me.
Right, but you missed the traveling, of
I
course.
miss the traveling. I like traveling.
Oh, yeah, definitely. What are some of your favorite places that you've been? Now, I love the Bay Area, and you did talk about wine country. I mean, what is one of your favorite places that you've been while on your travels with your book tours?
Well, I did do a tour. I went up to San Francisco area, and I did one in Berkeley and Oakland, and those were neat. And then Grass Valley in California. I also was in Louisville, Kentucky, where I did my MFA in writing. Did some readings there. So, it's fun to travel, but it does get tiring.
I agree, definitely.
Yes.
Well, we will be right back with See You with more from Diana, and we'll see you in a minute.